Ali MacGraw was once known as one of the most beautiful women in the world, the perfect image of classic Hollywood romance. Steve McQueen, called the King of Cool, represented rebellion and independence in American cinema. When these two stars met, their love story seemed like a dream come true, one that fascinated fans and made endless headlines. But behind the glamour and passion, their relationship became filled with control, fear, and emotional pain. Now, at 85, Ali MacGraw has spoken openly about how McQueen's possessiveness and anger slowly took over her life, leaving her feeling isolated and trapped. In 1970, Ali MacGraw's career was at its peak. She had become a global sensation after her breakout roles in Goodbye, Columbus and the hit movie Love Story. Her beauty was natural and effortless, unlike many Hollywood stars of the time who depended on glamorized images. She had a calm, intelligent charm, with long dark hair and a simple but elegant style that felt refreshing to the world. Ali was admired not just for her looks, but for her genuine personality. After Love Story, she became one of the most popular and highest-paid actresses in the world. She was nominated for an Oscar and was seen as the face of romantic cinema in that era. At the same time, she was married to Robert Evans, the powerful head of Paramount Studios. Together, they represented Hollywood's success at its highest level. Ali had everything: fame, money, influence, and the freedom to choose her own projects. But her life took a dramatic turn in 1972 when she traveled to Texas to film The Getaway. Her co-star was Steve McQueen, already a movie icon known for his intensity, charm, and unpredictable nature. When Ali met him, she felt an instant connection, something she later described as purely chemical. It was a kind of attraction that overpowered logic and blurred the consequences. Their connection quickly turned into a full-blown affair that became one of Hollywood's biggest scandals. Ali risked everything: her marriage, her reputation, and her career, to be with McQueen. Their passion was wild and uncontrollable, and in 1973, they married. To the outside world, they looked like the perfect couple, two incredibly beautiful and talented stars whose love burned bright. Magazines and reporters followed their every move, painting them as Hollywood's ultimate power couple. But while the world admired them, a darker story was unfolding behind closed doors. Even in the early days, Ali could sense that Steve carried deep emotional scars. She believed that her love could help calm his troubled soul, but instead, his inner chaos began to consume their marriage. Steve McQueen's troubled personality came from a painful and unstable childhood. He was born in 1930, and his early life was filled with hardship. His father, a circus stuntman, abandoned the family before Steve was even a year old. His mother struggled with addiction and brought several abusive men into their home. Steve's childhood was spent moving from one place to another, never having a real sense of safety or belonging. He spent a short time living with his uncle on a farm in Missouri, but when he returned to his mother, the chaos only grew worse. Eventually, he was sent to a reform school called Boys Republic in Chino, California. This experience didn't heal him, it hardened him. Surrounded by troubled boys, he learned to protect himself by building emotional walls. That rebellious tough guy image that later made McQueen famous wasn't just acting, it was who he truly was. His cool, detached manner came from years of pain and distrust. Movies like Bullet made him a legend, but behind the camera, he was struggling with anger and insecurity. McQueen had a deep need to control everything around him: his career, his possessions, and the people in his life. He couldn't handle feeling powerless, and that included his relationships. Unfortunately, this controlling nature only got worse as he grew more famous. Along with his emotional issues, McQueen also had serious problems with drugs and alcohol. These habits were not just for pleasure, they were ways for him to escape his pain. But instead of helping him, they made his moods unpredictable and his behavior more dangerous. His paranoia and temper became harder to manage, and this made life with him extremely difficult. By the time Ali MacGraw entered his world, these patterns were deeply rooted. Steve's first wife, Neil Adams, later revealed that she suffered through the same painful cycle: constant cheating, suspicion, and both physical and emotional abuse. Ali didn't know the full extent of what she was walking into. She believed she could help Steve heal, that her love could change him. But what she didn't realize was that his wounds were far too deep for anyone else to fix. Ali MacGraw was independent, strong, and successful. She had built her career through talent and hard work, not through dependency on anyone. But Steve McQueen couldn't accept a wife who was more famous than he was. He had a very traditional view of marriage. He wanted to be the dominant one, the provider, the person in control. Ali's rising fame and independence made him insecure. What started as passion and admiration slowly turned into jealousy and control. McQueen began to isolate Ali from her friends and career opportunities. He didn't want her working with other actors or taking roles that would make her too visible. He wanted her to be at home, dedicated entirely to him. For a woman who had always valued her freedom, this became suffocating. Yet, she loved him deeply and didn't want to lose him, so she made sacrifices. Slowly, she gave up her work, her social life, and her independence to keep peace in their marriage. At first, Ali told herself that she was just being a supportive wife, that this was what love meant, compromise and devotion. But soon, she realized she was disappearing into the relationship. McQueen's unpredictable moods, jealousy, and substance abuse made her life increasingly lonely and frightening. The charming, confident man she fell in love with had become someone she barely recognized. Behind the glamour, their marriage was falling apart. To the world, they were still a golden couple, but inside their home, the reality was much darker. McQueen's need for control became stronger as Ali tried to regain her sense of self. Their love, once so passionate, turned into a constant struggle for emotional survival. Ali later described those years as some of the most painful of her life. Eventually, their relationship could no longer survive the constant tension and emotional damage. McQueen's anger and controlling behavior pushed Ali to her breaking point. After years of trying to hold on, she realized that love could not save a man who refused to face his own pain. Looking back now, Ali MacGraw speaks with honesty and grace about her past. She doesn't deny the love they shared or the chemistry that drew them together, but she also acknowledges the emotional cost of that love. She learned that passion without respect and balance can destroy rather than heal. Her story is a reminder that even the most glamorous relationships can hide deep pain, and that real strength sometimes means walking away from what you once thought was everything. Ali MacGraw and Steve McQueen's story remains one of Hollywood's most unforgettable love stories, one filled with beauty, passion, and tragedy. Behind the fame and the headlines were two deeply human people searching for love and meaning, but caught in a storm of insecurity and control. In the end, Ali's courage to tell her story not only honors her past but also helps others understand that true love should never come at the cost of one's own identity. The love that once felt so powerful between Ali MacGraw and Steve McQueen slowly became something that trapped her. For Steve, their relationship wasn't about partnership, it was about control. Once Ali committed to him, he began to reshape her world according to his own insecurities. She thought she was choosing freedom and passion, but in truth, she was walking into a cage she could not see until it was too late. The first thing McQueen demanded from her was simple but absolute: she had to quit acting. He didn't want a wife who shared the spotlight. Deep down, he was threatened by her success and couldn't stand the idea of being overshadowed. Steve came from an old-fashioned mindset where men ruled the home and women were expected to follow. He wanted a wife who stayed at home, cooked, and waited for him, not one who had her own ambitions and fans. Ali loved him deeply and believed she could adapt. She convinced herself that giving up her career was a small price to pay for love. So, at the height of her fame in 1973, when she was one of the most famous actresses in the world, Ali MacGraw walked away from Hollywood. The decision shocked everyone. People couldn't believe that someone at the peak of success, with offers pouring in and global recognition, would suddenly quit. The sacrifice cost her more than she ever imagined. She didn't just lose roles, she gave up her voice, her independence, and her identity. Some of the biggest film roles of the 1970s, including parts in The Great Gatsby and Chinatown, were offered to her, but she turned them down because of Steve. Those roles made stars of other actresses, but they could have belonged to Ali. Instead, her once bright career faded almost overnight. After that, Steve decided to pull them out of Hollywood completely. They moved to isolated homes, sometimes living on remote ranches where they were far away from other people. To the world, it looked like a couple escaping fame for a simpler life, but for Ollie, it was a deeper form of control. Steve didn't want anyone reminding her of who she used to be. He wanted her world to revolve entirely around him. Ollie's days became centered on Steve's hobbies and moods. She supported his love for racing, cars, and motorbikes while setting aside her own interests in art, reading, and creativity. Slowly, she stopped recognizing herself. The woman who once stood confidently on red carpets and movie sets now lived in the shadow of her husband. Her sense of worth, once tied to her talent and intelligence, began to disappear. Meanwhile, Steve's career flourished. He continued to act in major films like Papillon and The Towering Inferno. He was still the star, the legend, the man everyone admired. Ollie, on the other hand, was left behind, reduced to the role of Mrs. Steve McQueen. The imbalance between them grew unbearable. To make matters worse, McQueen had Ollie sign a prenuptial agreement before they married. At the time, she didn't think much of it. She was in love and believed they'd be together forever. But the agreement gave him all the power and left her financially exposed. It was another symbol of his need to control everything, including her future. Living in isolation didn't calm McQueen's inner chaos. In fact, it made things worse. Away from the noise of Hollywood, his paranoia, jealousy, and temper had nowhere to go but toward Ollie. The quiet life became suffocating, filled with tension and unpredictable outbursts. With no career and few friends around, she had nowhere to turn. McQueen's addictions deepened, and his temper became more dangerous. His substance use and alcohol abuse made him volatile and unpredictable. At first, there were still good moments, times when he would be loving and apologetic, moments that reminded her of the man she'd fallen in love with. But those moments were brief. They were always followed by anger, long absences, or cold silence. Ollie lived in a constant state of confusion and fear, waiting for the next emotional storm. Adding to her pain was Steve's constant infidelity. He demanded loyalty from her while freely cheating with other women. The affairs weren't even secret, he flaunted them openly, making Ollie feel humiliated and powerless. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a way to break her spirit. He wanted her to feel small and dependent, as if she couldn't exist without him. Despite the heartbreak, Ollie kept trying to hold on. She convinced herself that his behavior was a symptom of his pain and that her love could somehow heal him. She excused his cruelty as something she could fix if she just tried harder. But the cycle never stopped, it only got worse. Eventually, the emotional abuse turned physical. Ollie has spoken carefully about that time, acknowledging that there were moments when McQueen's anger crossed the line. The fear became constant. The man who had once made her feel alive now made her feel unsafe in her own home. In the 1970s, it was nearly impossible for women, especially famous ones, to speak openly about domestic abuse. Society expected them to smile and pretend everything was fine. Ollie felt trapped between her private pain and the need to maintain a perfect public image. Then, the final heartbreak came. Ollie suffered a miscarriage. It was a devastating loss that shattered what little hope remained in their marriage. She needed kindness, comfort, and love, but Steve's reaction was cold and emotionless. He showed no real sympathy or support, leaving her completely broken. That moment made her realize just how alone she truly was. By then, the illusion of love had completely fallen apart. The man she once thought would be her protector had become her tormentor. Her life with McQueen was no longer about passion or companionship, it was about survival. Every day, she lived with fear, confusion, and the haunting memory of what her life had been before him. Eventually, Ollie found the strength to leave. It wasn't easy, she had lost almost everything, her career, her money, and her sense of self. But walking away was the only way to save what was left of her spirit. Over time, she rebuilt her life, learning to value herself again and to see that love should never mean surrendering your freedom or your identity. Looking back, MacGraw doesn't speak about Steve McQueen with hatred, but with understanding. She recognizes that he was a man damaged by his past, unable to love in a healthy way. Her story is both tragic and inspiring, a warning about how love, when mixed with control and insecurity, can destroy even the strongest person. Yet, it also shows the power of resilience. Today, Ali MacGraw is seen not just as a Hollywood icon but as a survivor. She endured emotional and physical pain but emerged wiser and more self-aware. Her honesty about her past has helped others recognize the importance of self-respect and boundaries in relationships. She once gave up everything for love, but in the end, she learned that real love should lift you up, not lock you away. When Ali MacGraw suffered her miscarriage, she needed comfort and compassion more than ever. Instead, Steve McQueen's reaction was cold and distant. He showed no empathy, no care, and no sense of support for the woman who had given up everything for him. For Ali, that moment was the final breaking point. It revealed with painful clarity that the man she had sacrificed her identity, her career, and her independence for was emotionally broken and incapable of giving her the love or protection she deserved. His indifference to her pain opened her eyes to a truth she could no longer ignore. She would have to choose between saving her own life or staying in a relationship that was destroying her. That realization marked the beginning of the end. Ali understood that if she stayed, she would lose herself completely. The decision to leave wasn't sudden, it was the result of years of heartbreak, control, and emotional exhaustion. The abuse, the endless betrayals, and the emptiness after her miscarriage all built up until she finally saw that the only way to survive was to walk away. She had once believed her love could heal Steve McQueen, but now she knew she couldn't save someone who didn't want to change. Leaving him was terrifying. Steve was one of the most famous men in the world, and their relationship had defined her public image. But the passion that had once felt like destiny had turned into a nightmare. The night Ali finally decided to go, the last bit of that intoxicating attraction died. She chose freedom over fame, self-respect over control. It was the hardest decision of her life, but also the most important one. Their separation in 1977 marked the start of a new, difficult chapter. The divorce was bitter and costly, both emotionally and financially. The prenuptial agreement that McQueen had insisted she sign now became a cruel weapon against her. When she had first agreed to it, she was deeply in love and never imagined she'd need protection from the man she trusted completely. But when the marriage ended, that document left her with almost nothing. For 5 years, Ali had given up her career, her income, and her independence for McQueen. Yet when it was all over, she found herself divorced from one of the richest and highest-paid actors in the world with no financial security of her own. She went from being one of Hollywood's top stars to struggling to pay her bills. The same industry that had once adored her now seemed to turn its back on her. Looking back years later, Ali admitted she had been naive. She said she was stupid not to protect herself, believing love would last forever. The painful reality of her divorce shattered that romantic idealism. The woman who had once embodied independence and strength was left to rebuild from nothing. But her struggles didn't end there. When Ali tried to return to acting, she discovered that Hollywood had moved on without her. Producers and studios viewed her as damaged goods, a woman whose public image had been tainted by scandal and failure. She had been away from the screen for too long, and the film world had changed. The powerful momentum she once had after Love Story and The Getaway was completely gone. Even when she was offered roles, they were nothing like the ones she had once been known for. In 1978, she appeared in the action film Convoy, which performed fairly well at the box office but was far from the kind of prestigious, career-defining work she had done earlier. It was a painful reminder that the glory days were behind her. Hollywood had no patience for a woman who had fallen from grace, no matter how talented or beautiful she still was. Her comeback attempts in the 1980s were filled with disappointment and rejection. She took roles out of necessity rather than passion. In 1984, she appeared in the television miniseries The Winds of War and later joined the cast of the hit show Dynasty as Lady Ashley Mitchell. While the job gave her financial stability for a time, critics were harsh. They dismissed her performances and labeled her as an actress who had lost her spark. For Ali, these criticisms were painful but not surprising. She wasn't doing the kind of work that fulfilled her artistically. She was simply trying to survive financially after years of hardship. The same woman who once turned down legendary film roles was now accepting whatever she could get just to stay afloat. Every script, every audition was a reminder of what she had lost, not just fame, but confidence and self-worth. The years following her divorce were among the hardest of her life. She was no longer the Hollywood golden girl, no longer the wife of a superstar. She was alone, emotionally drained, and struggling to find purpose. On the outside, she appeared calm and graceful, but inside she was fighting battles no one could see. The trauma of her marriage left deep scars, and her isolation made recovery even harder. In the midst of this emotional wreckage, Ali developed a dependency that she later admitted was a quiet addiction. It wasn't just about substances, it was about emotional dependency, about constantly seeking something or someone to fill the emptiness left behind. The same vulnerability that had drawn her to McQueen now made her vulnerable to self-destructive habits. Throughout the 1980s, Ali worked to rebuild not only her career but also her sense of self. It was a slow, painful journey. Hollywood was unkind to women who aged out of their it-girl phase, and she often felt invisible in the very world that had once celebrated her. But despite everything, she kept going. She started exploring spiritual and self-healing practices, searching for peace in ways that fame had never given her. As she grew older, Ali MacGraw began to find strength in honesty. She spoke openly about her mistakes and her pain, turning her story into something meaningful. She admitted how easily love can turn into dependency, and how dangerous it can be to lose yourself in someone else's shadow. Her willingness to share these truths made her not just a survivor, but a symbol of resilience for many women who faced similar struggles. In the end, Ali's greatest achievement wasn't her beauty or her fame, it was her ability to rise after being broken. She learned that freedom and self-respect were worth more than any romantic fantasy. Though she once lost everything, she regained something much more important, herself. Her story remains a powerful reminder that even the brightest love can turn dark when control and fear replace respect and care. Ali MacGraw's courage to walk away from one of Hollywood's most famous men, to rebuild her life despite rejection and loss, stands as proof that real strength often comes from the most painful choices. She may have lost her career and fortune, but she found her peace, and that, in the end, was her greatest victory. Ali MacGraw's marriage to Steve McQueen was once seen as a dream union between two of Hollywood's biggest stars, but behind the glamour was a painful and destructive reality. During one of the most difficult moments in her life, when she needed love and comfort, McQueen gave her nothing but cold indifference. That emotional distance broke something inside her. She realized that the man she had given up her identity, career, and independence for was incapable of empathy or care. It was the moment that forced her to face the truth: her love for him could not save her. Staying meant losing herself completely, so she made the hardest choice of her life: to leave. The decision led to a bitter divorce and years of struggle, but it was also the first step toward saving herself. Her separation in 1977 marked an act of survival, not rebellion. The marriage had become a prison, filled with control, betrayal, and emotional cruelty. Walking away meant freedom, but it also came with devastating consequences. Before they married, McQueen had made her sign a prenuptial agreement that left her with almost nothing. At the time, she was deeply in love and didn't think about the legal implications. But after the divorce, that document became her greatest burden. She had given up her career for him at its peak and now found herself financially broken. Once one of the highest paid and most admired actresses in Hollywood, she suddenly had no work, no stability, and no safety net. Ali later admitted that she had been naive, calling herself stupid for not protecting her future. The romantic ideal she once believed in was shattered by the harsh reality of that contract. When she tried to rebuild her career, Hollywood turned its back on her. Many producers saw her as difficult, unstable, or outdated. The industry that had once celebrated her now dismissed her completely. The 5-year gap she spent away from acting while married to McQueen proved impossible to overcome. The energy she had built from her success and love story and The Getaway had disappeared. Her first film after the divorce, Convoy, 1978, brought modest success, but it was nowhere near the level of fame she had once enjoyed. In a short time, Ali lost everything: her marriage, her fame, her financial stability, and her confidence. The outward battles were over, but the internal ones were just beginning. She had escaped her marriage, but she could not escape the emotional scars it left behind. The loneliness, humiliation, and loss began to consume her. By the early 1980s, she found herself quietly battling alcohol dependency, using it to numb the pain and emptiness inside her. She later admitted that her addiction was not only to alcohol but also to love itself. She kept searching for someone or something to replace what McQueen had taken from her, her sense of worth. Being a single mother to her son while struggling to make ends meet only deepened her exhaustion. The years she spent trying to live up to McQueen's demands had left her broken and insecure. The barefoot and pregnant life he forced on her had destroyed not only her career but her entire sense of self. She was trapped in a cycle of unhealthy habits until a close friend convinced her to seek help. In 1986, she entered the Betty Ford Clinic. At first, she thought she just needed a short tune-up and didn't see herself as an addict. But that illusion quickly disappeared. Over 30 intense days, she was forced to face the truth: she was an alcoholic and emotionally dependent. That experience became a turning point. In rehab, stripped of all distractions, she began the difficult work of healing. She confronted her patterns of self-destruction and dependency, learning to live without the chaos that had once defined her life. Recovery gave her a second chance. Once sober, Ali decided to leave Hollywood behind completely. In the 1990s, she moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, determined to build a new kind of life, quiet, authentic, and far from the toxic culture of fame. There, she found peace and simplicity. She focused on writing, art, and activism. Her autobiography, Moving Pictures, became a deeply honest reflection of her life, the pain, the addiction, the love, and the lessons. She also devoted herself to causes close to her heart, especially animal rights and women's empowerment. In the peaceful desert, she finally found stability and purpose. Even after decades, the memory of Steve McQueen remains a shadow in her life. Now in her 80s, Ali speaks about him with honesty and compassion. She no longer describes their connection as romantic: it was chemical, she says, meaning unstable and destructive. What once felt like passion, she now recognizes as addiction. She often reflects on their relationship with a mixture of regret and understanding, once saying, "I wish we had both grown old sober." It's a statement filled with sorrow, not anger or recognition of how their shared addictions destroyed what might have been. She admits she always sensed the danger in McQueen. She was drawn to his intensity, his bad boy energy, even knowing it could hurt her. The trauma she endured wasn't entirely unexpected. It was the result of choosing to love someone she hoped she could change. Over time, she's come to accept her own part in that tragedy without self-pity. She forgives herself for the mistakes she made and feels no hatred toward McQueen, only sadness for the man he was, talented but deeply broken. McQueen's death in 1980, just 3 years after their divorce, ended any possibility of reconciliation. He died at 50 from heart failure following cancer surgery. Ali has often wondered what might have happened if he had lived longer, if he might have found peace and sobriety like she did. That reflection brings her both closure and melancholy. Today, Ali's voice carries the authority of survival. She tells her story not to gain sympathy but to reveal the truth behind the Hollywood myth. The world saw McQueen as the king of cool, but she knew the real man, charming yet controlling, magnetic yet cruel. Her willingness to tell that truth shows her strength and the depth of her recovery. Ali's story is not just about lost love. It is a lesson about the price of passion, the danger of control, and the strength it takes to rebuild a life. Her greatest victory isn't in her fame or awards but in her healing. She found meaning beyond Hollywood, beyond addiction, and beyond the pain of the past. In Santa Fe, she lives with calm purpose, surrounded by nature and community rather than cameras and chaos. She works with women's cooperatives like IBU, helping female artisans around the world gain independence through design. Her life now is about authenticity, compassion, and empowerment, the very things she was once denied. Ali MacGraw's true legacy is not her beauty or her fame, but her courage to survive, recover, and tell her story with honesty. She has shown that it's possible to rebuild from nothing, to find peace after devastation, and to live with integrity after loss. At 85, she stands not as a victim of a famous man but as a woman who reclaimed her power, her name, and her life. The King of Cool demanded obedience, but Ali MacGraw chose freedom.